Breaking the gray.
Sarah, you look radiant as usual. That's the word I'm going to use to describe you, as Sarah Radiant Turner. Your radiance is glowing today. You've had some, looks like you are continuing to get some West Coast sunshine here on the Pacific Coast.
For sure. Yeah, the fog burnt off yesterday and we had some lovely sunshine. So,
Sarah.
Sure.
Okay, good. We lost you for a second there. Let's start again. Yeah. We're back. So you're getting some, we'll cut that out. Thanks, Dave. Sarah, you're getting some West Coast sunshine, it looks like.
Yes, I am. The fog burnt off, and yesterday I was out in the sun all day, so fabulous.
Good.
Topping myself up with red light.
Were you foraging? Were you outside? I'm curious because you're on the West Coast here, so are you finding different things when you're out there foraging?
Yes, and that's why I'm very excited to bring on our guest today, Jeff Chilton. I'm actually in the Redwoods here, and we have tons of mushroom and fungi. And in fact, the friend that I'm staying with, she's kind of totally into it, and we had a book, and we were out there trying to do some identification yesterday. So welcome, Jeff. It's so lovely and so timely to have you on. Mushroom expert.
Well, thank you so much. I'm really happy to be here to speak to you about that. And I, too, am on the West Coast. I'm on the West Coast of Vancouver Island.
Oh, wonderful.
Fabulous. Yeah. And how's that at this time of year?
Well, you know what? It's been great because it's been very sunny. And I like that because, we don't get a lot of sun when winter comes along. And even in the summer, it's a little cooler. But what that does mean is we haven't got a lot of rain. So the mushroom season's not going to be very good this year.
Interesting. Yeah, interesting. The drought may be causing a bit of havoc with the mushroom growing.
Yeah, you need the good rain in August and September to set things up for a very solid season.
Right.
And Jeff, let's talk about a solid season. And we're West Coast. We have a big listening audience in the UK because of Sarah. Let's talk about when it's really wet and things are ideal. What are you out there looking for? What are the mushrooms you're looking for?
Well, we have a couple of mushrooms that are very famous. One is the chanterelle. Lots of chanterelles. That's very common mushrooms for us here. But out on the West Coast, we also have Boletus edulis, which is called the king bolete, which is one of the top choice wild mushrooms. So those two specifically. The other one too that is interesting is called the pine mushroom. The pine mushroom in Japan actually sells for upwards of $500 a kilo at retail. It's a very sought after mushroom, and in a good season you can pick a lot of them. It's really crazy.
And now you don't need this isn't like truffle hunting. You don't need to take a specific dog or a wild boar with you. You can find these visually, right?
That's so funny because in 1979, I was at a mushroom conference in France, and we literally went out into the truffle forests, and one of the men had a pig on a leash. and when the pig would find the truffle, then the man would sort of rein him back in and get down and dig it out. And they also had someone with a trained dog, and it was a little French poodle. Now they're finding that. Yeah. So and these days they don't use the pigs as much. It's much easier to train a dog.
Oh, really? Yeah. Where was I? I was in Cyprus and did some truffle hunting, and they had pigs. They had trained pigs.
Recently?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Not recently, probably, I don't know, 5-6 years ago, but...
Well, because again, this was not 1978, and pigs were kind of the standard out there, because you can imagine they're rooting around all the time. That's really part of it. But, in my business, I do not work with wild mushrooms at all. In fact, I'm against wildcrafting for businesses. I think wildcrafting should be left to the community and
Mm-hmm.
to individuals that go out there. When wildcrafting and when certain items get to be very valuable, like a pine mushroom out here, very valuable. Next thing you know, you have organized groups coming into an
Mm-hmm.
area, and they run through, they harvest, they don't care about what they leave behind. Sometimes they'll rake up to try and find these things, like a truffle. You can imagine if they think there's a truffle there, they might bring a shovel out.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I can totally see that. It's kind of, yeah, like you say, it should be a community-based thing where you're just taking what you need.
Exactly.
But
Yeah.
obviously, there's a time when you want to have mushrooms, you want to know what you're getting. And that's presumably where your business comes in, where you know exactly what you're doing, what you're finding, and you have a process and a way of growing mushrooms. And I think a way of processing them in a very specific way. Maybe you can
Oh
tell us
yeah.
a bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, first of all, you know what? Mushroom cultivation is really interesting. Have either of you ever been to a mushroom farm?
No, never.
1 in 100
No.
people have been to a mushroom farm. Well, the reason, of course, is that most mushroom farms are indoors in
Right.
maybe warehouses or something. You don't even know that they're there. Normally in the West, at climate controlled rooms where the temperature, humidity, fresh air is all kept a certain amount. But think about this for a second. Mushrooms do not have seeds. How do you grow something if you don't have a seed? Well, mushrooms are part of a fungal organism, and that organism produces spores. The spores fly out in nature, they land on the ground, they land in a piece of wood. When they germinate into a very fine filament. We call it a hypha. When multiple filaments fuse together, it forms what's called a mycelium. And that's the vegetative body of this organism. And the mycelium is really cool because what it's doing is it's breaking down organic matter, which without this mycelium and bacteria and the other things in the soils, we would be covered in organic matter every year, right? Leaves,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
branches, annual plants. The mycelium, we don't see it. It's underground. It's embedded in its substrate. When conditions are right, like now in the fall where we are, temperature goes down a little bit, humidity goes up because it's raining. Mushrooms do not like dry conditions. If it's too dry, they'll start to come up, and the next thing you know, they'll just go like, sorry, can't grow anymore. It's too dry. So conditions are right, up comes this mushroom, and then it goes through the different stages. The stem comes up, the cap unfolds. Under the cap are gills, sometimes pores. That's where the spores are generated. Now you have a completion of the life cycle. And this is super important. Spore, mycelium, and mushroom. Because if you go out to buy a supplement, you need to know what are you getting in this supplement. If it's ginseng, you want a root. If it's echinacea, you want a flower. So mushroom cultivation is interesting because no seeds. What does it use? It uses live mycelium as the seed. So they put that mycelium on a carrier,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes on grains, sometimes on other materials, so that they can then, once the mycelium grows over that material, they can break it up, spread it throughout the substrate, whether it's compost or maybe it's wood sawdust or something like that. Mycelium grows out, and that's the start of the mushroom cultivation cycle. So again, no seeds, spores. Live mycelium is the actual seed used for growing mushrooms.
And then presumably the fruiting body, the mushroom, is the part that you would get if you're kind of ordering these things as a supplement or as a food powder. Because that's how I consume my mushrooms. I mean, we have them here, but I wouldn't dare, eat any of the things I find in the forest. I mean, we kind of look it up, but, you never quite know. But I do take mushrooms daily, actually. I take powdered lion's mane and cordyceps and reishi, and I normally either put it in coffee or put it in like a hot chocolate drink.
Cool. So you buy the powder then?
Yeah, I buy powder. Yeah. Well,
awesome.
The chaga comes in looks a bit like bark, but again, I'm kind of improvising here. I normally just stew up in hot water. So
no, not at all. Chaga. I mean, chaga. If you see a picture of it, it is not a mushroom. Chaga's not a mushroom. We call it a mushroom because it's born from a fungal organism. But basically, chaga is this gnarly black thing that grows off the side of a tree, and it's actually a diseased tree from the fungal infection, and it is pushing out on the bark because of this, trying to do something about this fungal infection, and ultimately this chaga grows out of that, and that's actually called a canker, and it's a specific type of disease of
Wow, I
trees.
didn't know that. I thought it was a
Yeah.
type of
Wow.
mushroom. Wow.
No, it's not. It's not a mushroom. It's, in fact, very little fungal tissue in there, maybe 10%. But it is produced by this fungal infection. And chaga's been used for hundreds and hundreds of years, especially in Russia, Eastern Europe, as a folk remedy, oftentimes for stomach issues,
Hmm.
and also as a folk remedy for cancer. So, it's an interesting fungal organism.
Mm.
Okay, we'll say mushroom, not really a mushroom, but we'll just call it that. Uh, and it's gained a lot of popularity. Chaga is the one mushroom that cannot be grown. It can't be grown because basically it's not a mushroom.
No, you
So
would have to somehow infect a tree.
you would, and that's the interesting part about it is I know companies in Scandinavia that are starting to do this because chaga grows in birch forests.
Yeah.
And so what they do is they go to the forest owner who essentially is growing up the birch trees for wood production. He'll cut it down at a certain point and sell it off as firewood or something like that. And they're saying, hey, look, can we come in, infect your trees, and then down the line, we will pay you for that chaga that we will come in and harvest.
How
We
interesting is that?
we
I mean,
are
yeah, that's fascinating. I get a
we
lot of stuff
yeah.
from Finland because they have a lot of forest and trees like that, but I didn't know. I mean, that's
Yeah,
bizarre,
yeah.
isn't it?
Well, yes, and that's where it's going on in Finland. That's where this company is
Yeah, I
based, and
bet.
of course, they start out with the wild chaga that they go out and harvest. But you can imagine you've got this forest. You're harvesting chaga. Sometimes it's growing up 10 feet on the tree. And so what are you going to do? You're going to traipse through this forest carrying a ladder? And then at what point, how do you get the chaga out? They're heavy. You get a bag full of them and you're like Santa Claus trying to pull them out. You've got a ladder with you.
Maybe that's what Santa Claus was doing. Maybe it's Santa Chaga. Maybe we just never knew it.
Well,
Maybe he was just collecting chaga.
well, listen, what's interesting is the Santa Claus that we know on, actually, if you go back in time, you see that Santa Claus actually did come out of a mushroom legend.
Yeah,
And that mushroom is Amanita
Really?
muscaria,
that's
which
what they
is
tell you when you go to Finland. They still celebrate that because of the white and the red cap.
That's right. It's a beautiful,
I,
beautiful mushroom. It's also psychoactive, by the way.
well, I mean, believing in Santa Claus, sorry to my children, is also a pretty crazy thing, right? It's pretty crazy to still believe in Santa Claus.
Yeah, no, it
And I'm
is.
not trying to ruin anything for any child listening, but I
But
do
it's
want to.
hallucinogenic, Russ. Do you not think that's interesting? Because it's got the white and the red, and it's
Yeah.
hallucinogenic. So of course you're going to see reindeers on houses. When you
Right.
all
Well, well,
these
well,
mushrooms.
well. Here's the interesting part about that. These legends come out of Siberia when it's cold, and the shamans in Siberia would harvest these mushrooms, dry them out, and there's some information about, okay, it's a snowy winter. Shoulder season, whatever. The shaman, how do you enter the house because the doors are, blocked with snow? Well, you go up and they've got pretty large holes there for the smoke to come out. He comes down into the house that way. Interesting, isn't it?
High
It's
as a kite,
fascinating.
high as a
Yeah.
kite on mushroom. So
Yeah.
I have a question though, because I think so. You said that that mushrooms and fungi don't really grow without having the wet rain and a lot of wet. What happens if they're submerged? Do like if there's too much water or if there's snow? What happens with mushrooms there? Can mushrooms grow underwater?
Well, there are fungi that grow underwater, not mushrooms per se, but there are fungi that will grow underwater. But the fact of the matter is that if you get a lot of rain in the rainy season, you'd better get that mushroom quick because what happens is it will become waterlogged. And what that means is the quality is not very good. You harvest that waterlogged mushroom, you take it back home, and you start to slice it. The flesh is really sort of thin. Uh, Too much liquid in it. You want something. The best time to pick a mushroom is it rains really hard one weekend, then it doesn't rain for 5 days or something. Now you go out and you will find these mushrooms growing and they will be in pristine condition. They won't be waterlogged. They'll be solid, firm. Colder temperatures will produce a more solid mushroom that is a higher
Hmm.
edible, more choice edible than something that grows really quickly and very thin fleshed.
Fascinating. And so you have a company that you actually grow mushrooms in these more controlled conditions. Maybe you can tell us, like, what kind of mushrooms are you growing, and what is the medicinal purpose? Because there are obviously a lot of things in mushrooms. People kind of talk about how you can use like lion's mane for the brain or different mushrooms for different purposes. What is your speciality, and what have you found from all your years of having this company?
Well, one of the things I learned through all my studies years ago was, in China, they've got a book. I've got a book that lists 270 different mushrooms with medicinal properties. Now, sometimes that's just based on one research paper,
Hmm.
but you look at traditional Chinese medicine, you go, okay, which ones have you been using consistently over the centuries? That's probably about 12 mushrooms or so. So that's what we sell: shiitake, maitake, lion's mane, cordyceps, reishi, turkey tail. Those are kind of the major ones. Those particular seven mushrooms. So we cultivate those, and we cultivate them on natural substrates. So the reishi would be growing on a wood log. Most of the other mushrooms are actually grown on sawdust. So we'll take sawdust, put it into special bags, be able to sterilize it, inoculate it with the mycelia. Interestingly enough, the majority of medicinal mushrooms, or what we call functional mushrooms, grow on wood. And that's something that nobody's really looked at too deeply, but it is interesting to think about that. Why is it that these wood uh, growing mushrooms produce these compounds that are more highly active than the other mushrooms? Because all mushrooms have in common a compound called a beta glucan. Makes up 50% of the cell walls. That is the compound that makes mushrooms active immunologically. Now, the interesting part about it is the beta glucan has different architectures. So different forms in different mushrooms. So in one mushroom, even though it's got beta glucans in it, they're not active beta glucans. Others, the architecture is such that they have very strong immunological activity. So, and these are beta 1316 glucans. We also know beta glucans from something like oats, but that's a beta 1314. They use oats for as kind of fiber and things like that, but they don't have the
Hmm.
immunological activity. Very, very different. So again, it's that architecture of the beta glucan that ultimately will mean, okay, this mushroom has much greater activity. And the reason we know is, like, I can say, okay, here are these 10 mushrooms that they've used traditionally in traditional Chinese medicine. What do the scientists say? Well, you go out and you look at all the research paper, and there's a tremendous body of research on these specific species that tell me, okay, I mean, whether it's reishi or shiitake or maitake, turkey tail, tremendous body of research data that really demonstrates and validates the fact that yes, these have activity, immunological activity. And that's the interesting part about it, is that's where science has gone to look at natural products that can enhance our immunity. Because, look, especially in these last few years, immunity has been very, very important. And people with strong immune systems have a much better chance of weathering anything that comes along. Maybe you won't get a cold or a flu like a lot of other people. When I was a smoker years ago, tobacco smoker, I'd get the flu maybe once a year. I'd get colds a couple times a year. It was just common. Now I don't at all. And I really think that, besides the fact that I stopped smoking, which was terrible for my health, but I also truly believe that these mushrooms can provide that level of immunity. And the important thing to remember about functional mushrooms is that it's not something where you take today and tomorrow you go, oh man, that cold is gone. No, you have to look at these like the same way you would look at, okay, I'm taking vitamin D, I'm taking vitamin C. It's something that you incorporate into your diet. You take them every day, and that's how ultimately they're going to provide benefits.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah,
and Sarah, I mean, and you mentioned the way that you consume them. Is there a best way to consume them? I mean, people like to throw them into olive oil and grill them up. You put them into a green shake in the morning. Is there a proper way or an ideal way to consume them?
Well, look, it's interesting because if you look at traditional Chinese medicine, how do they deliver the herbs and that they're prescribing for people? Well, mostly they use a water extract. They throw it in, they make a tea. That's interesting. Tea is nothing more than an extract. Just like you think about making a chicken soup, you throw it into this pot of water and you cook it up. Well, you're extracting that chicken. So what we do and what we think is important. Look, you can eat mushrooms. Mushrooms are not highly digestible. They have a lot of fiber in them, which is not a bad thing. Fiber is a good thing, right? And interestingly enough, when I started growing mushrooms commercially in 1973, classical nutritionists said mushrooms have no food value. Why did they say that? Low in calories. And that's part of the, a lot of fiber there. Great for your microbiome. But essentially, in terms of how you want to consume them, well, the one thing about what we're doing is we're processing those mushrooms into an extract through water extraction. We come out with a very fine powder. And that essentially helps to break down the cell walls to where it's a little more bioavailable than just eating mushrooms. And look, I'm a huge advocate of mushroom consumption. I think mushrooms are the forgotten food and the missing dietary link. They are an amazing food. So I always say to people, put mushrooms into your diet first. If you want to supplement, great. And in terms of supplementation, you know what? I think taking that powder and stick it into a smoothie or whatever, I think that's a wonderful way of doing it. Some mushrooms, like reishi, are very bitter. Most people are like, I just spoiled my smoothie. So reishi, generally, you want to take it in a capsule. And in my business, which is I sell raw materials, so bulk powders to other companies. We also have a retail line. And when we first came out with the retail line, it was just all powders in pouches. Then there's quite a lot of feedback about the reishi. It was like, I can't do this. You have to put it in capsules. So we also came out with the complete line in capsules too. So you can take it either way, but I really believe that extracting it, and that's normally what will happen with most supplements, but with the mushroom, you want to extract it. That really helps to break down the fiber and get you the beta glucans, and so that's what we do.
And what about dose? Because when I'm doing it, I kind of just I chuck in a teaspoon or whatever I feel like. But is it kind of standardized? Like if I buy 6 different pouches of lion's mane, is it going to have the similar kind of active, or is it a bit hit and miss, or can you overdo it? Can you take too much?
I don't think you can overdo it. That's one of the beauties of it, because these are, for the most part, foods. So right. You really can't overdo it. What you do have to look out for is, like any supplement you might want to buy is the quality in
Hmm.
there. And one of the things that's happened in the United States and probably in Britain as well, in fact, I know in Britain as well, is that some companies now look, mushrooms are expensive to produce. Every mushroom you've ever eaten has been harvested by hand. A hand has picked that mushroom to bring it to you. It's expensive, but you can grow mushrooms, fresh mushrooms, put in the market. You can make a business out of it. You can make a profit out of it. But supplements are dried powders.
Right.
Mushrooms are 90% water. The minute you dry those mushrooms out, that let's say you're getting $5 a pound for as a producer, now you have to get $50 a pound for it.
Right.
Economics do not work out. So what a lot of companies will do now in the US, they will grow the mycelium stage on sterilized grain. And once that mycelium covers the grain, they will then dry it, grind it to a powder, grain and all, and then sell it to you as a mushroom.
Right.
No mushrooms involved, period. It's just the mycelial stage grown on a grain. And what that means is that the final product is ultimately mostly starch. So a lot of people are buying these products not knowing that what they're actually getting is nothing more than grain starch. And that's really unfortunate.
And how would you know? I mean, is there a way that you can, as a consumer, vet the company or know exactly what you're getting from the company?
Well, yeah, well, yes, there is. In the U.S. or Canada, if it says grown in the U.S., that's what you're getting. I, being a commercial mushroom grower from way back, I know the economics of it really well. So in 1989, I went to China, where all this is happening in a
Right.
major way.
I
Oh
see.
God, you cannot imagine the research institutes. They've got like 12 to 15 of them. In the United States, there's only one place in the United States where they do that kind of research. Tens of thousands of small growers everywhere. So we set up to do all of our growing and processing in China. In 1997, I went to China with OCIA, the primary organic certification organization. We had the first organic certification workshop for mushrooms in China. All our products are certified organic by high quality German certifiers. I say this just for all the people that are going, China, no, I'm not, no,
No,
no.
it's good to know. Definitely, it's good to know because people do have that perception that, oh, if it's coming from China, it's got to be something that's kind of copied or lower quality.
Well, a lot of herbs you
Mm.
can't get them in North America, period, or
Hmm.
in UK. You have to get China, India, these kind of
Hmm.
places. So that's the thing you look for. Where's it being made? If it's being made in the United States, it's definitely these products. Also, you can flip over and we have what's called supplement facts panel.
Hmm.
If that panel says mycelium, okay, you know that's what you're getting. And if you look in the fine print, sometimes in the fine print, what they will have is they will actually tell you in the fine print
Right.
myceliated rice or oats or something. You have to be very careful. I mean, and this is not just about the mushroom category. I mean, supplements, my God, people think they're not regulated. They're heavily regulated. The problem is you can go through all of those, whether it be certified organic, kosher, no gluten, no this, no that, done in a great conditions. Still doesn't mean it's a good product. It can still be one of these products, even though it's gone through all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, fascinating. That there's a lot to look for, but that's good to have some clues there. I'm definitely going to check what I've got. What is your favorite mushroom, Jeff? Then, what's your favorite one, and how do you consume them?
Well, every day I've got two different mushrooms that I can. One is first of all, I'd say reishi is my favorite. I think reishi is the best. It not only has the beta glucans, it has compounds called triterpenoids. Triterpenoids are very good for our liver function. So it's kind of a dual use mushroom in that sense. All most of the others have these beta glucans that are immunologically active. I take a one of our products that has 5 of these mushrooms in them. So I take that every day. And also, I take one of our products, actually doesn't come from a mushroom, but it will at some point. But right now it comes from a yeast, which is part of the fungal kingdom, called ergothioneine. you heard of ergothioneine?
Never.
Sounds
Oh,
like it's from Lord of the Rings.
yeah, that's right. That's like where you go to try and find the certain ring. Sarah,
Tolkien.
look
Very
it up
Tolkien.
sometime. Ergothioneine. It is a antioxidant that's found in many parts of the body where there's high oxidative stress. We don't produce it. It has to come from outside food sources. Mushrooms are one of the highest natural sources of ergothioneine. So we measure that in all of our products. We think it's something that's really important. So we actually have a product out there that is just gives you 5 milligrams of ergothioneine. I take that every day too. So I those are the two that I do take. You know, the other thing that's really interesting is mushrooms have a compound in them called ergosterol. Ergosterol is similar to our cholesterol. Well, when you expose mushroom tissue to UV, it turns the ergosterol into pre-vitamin D2. This is very similar to us and our basically cholesterol. It's the same basic principle. So that's another product that we're working on, which is, in fact, we do have a product right now that is vitamin D2 from actual mushrooms, and we're going to work on that further because right now it's fairly expensive, but we're going to work on it, get the cost down. I love that. If you ever go out there and look at how they process the raw material to make vitamin D3, you will be astounded. The chemicals that they use are, and we're talking now about a vitamin D2. It's mushroom powder. You expose it. That's it.
That's
Done.
fascinating. So, is it a bioavailable form? Because my understanding, of the conversion is mainly in humans. Is very difficult to get around that. That you need the sun. You actually need the sun to make that direct conversion. And taking it in powder or capsule form, once that conversion's been made, it's very difficult for the body to absorb that.
Well, you know what we work with, and there's some really interesting research by one of the world's experts in vitamin D, and he unequivocally states if you are taking D2 on a regular basis, there's no difference between that and D3. And look, let's face it, it would be great if we could get all of our vitamin D from the sun. We can't. If you're in the UK, even if you're going out there in the summertime and exposing yourself, you may not be getting enough vitamin D because what happens is just the angle of the rays into the northern hemisphere, even during the summer, you're not getting that great an exposure. So I truly believe in supplementing with vitamin D. I think it's very important, and that's something that's proven out with COVID, where so
Yeah,
many people that were hospitalized had low levels of
exactly.
vitamin D. That's really interesting and super important. And that's why I think everybody should be supplementing with vitamin D one way or the other. And I do take supplemental D because I think that's very important. By the way, I also developed a interesting product a couple of years ago. I went, well, geez, I see what's going on. I want to do a product that's got our mushroom extracts, zinc, and vitamin D. And because I'm like, I used to take zinc. I kind of stopped,
Hmm.
supplementation. Sometimes you supplement, then you stop.
That's right.
And same with vitamin D. I used to take it, not so much anymore. Then I went, well, God, what if I had one of our own products and we put zinc in it and I had mushroom vitamin D in it and also the mushroom extracts. I said, let's make it. And so I take that every day.
Well, that sounds like a perfect immune formula because, like you say, you're getting those. What did you call them? Glucans.
Beta glucans
You're getting the beta glucans, and you're then getting the vitamin D
and the
uh,
zinc
and
because
the
they've
zinc.
also, yeah.
That does sound perfect. I mean, you're right about certainly places like the UK. It's very difficult to make that vitamin, especially in the winter and even in the summer, because in an ideal world we are all outside for the whole summer, but that obviously doesn't happen.
Well, not only that, they're telling you be careful, don't expose yourself, right?
Oh well, I don't
And
listen to that for sure.
well.
I'm out there. No, I get as much as I can, but certainly is very difficult in this indoor lifestyle that we have. And so I will definitely look up the mushroom way of making that vitamin D? Because if it is a more natural way, perhaps it is more bioavailable.
Well, and Sarah, I can send you some papers because I've got some
Sure, that would be
great
great.
papers on it from Dr. Hollick. And like I say,
Oh,
he's
yes, I
been,
know Dr. Hollick. Yeah.
yeah, Dr. Hollick. I mean, he's an amazing guy. His whole career has been he's an MD. He's a researcher.
Yeah, he has a
Right,
great book. Yeah, he has a
right
great
from
book on vitamin D.
university.
Yeah,
He's been doing it.
yeah.
So he's definitely knows what he's doing and talking about.
Yes, that's credential stamp there for sure. Yeah, great. I'd love to have those papers.
Yeah.
So maybe then we can lead on some tips of how people can start to introduce mushrooms into their diet, or what are the best ones, or what are your recommendations?
Well, you know what? Again, like I was telling you, I always recommend you should be eating mushrooms. Now, one of the things that you have to remember is that when you're cooking mushrooms, you have to use a high heat. If you're throwing them in, sauteing them or something, you have to use a high heat. If the heat's too low, what happens? All the water comes right out of them. And now they're sitting in this pool of water, getting all waterlogged. And then your kids say, God, I hate mushrooms. They're so slimy. Cook them properly. High heat, that seals the water in. I like to brown them on either side, cut them maybe 1/4 of an inch thick. That's important, not too thin. You throw them in there, you think, oh, geez, that's an awful lot. They shrink to probably half their size. So don't be sure you get enough of them when you put them in there and cook them. Use whatever oil you like, but that's how I basically will cook them primarily.
Do you wash them? Because this is an argument that we have at my house. My sister wants to wash all the dirt off, but I don't want to wash them because they do get waterlogged. So do you wash your mushrooms first, or
well,
not?
here's something to remember. That is all about, that whole idea is all about the fact that you've been out hunting, you've got a wild mushroom, and the cap is expanded, so the gills are exposed. If you're buying button mushrooms from the supermarket, there's no gills exposed at all, and they may have a little bit of peat moss on them from the soil they're growing out of. I wash mine. It just takes a second to quickly put them under the tap, put them out. That's the button mushroom. Again, when you're washing a something else out there, well, a chanterelle, that's easy enough to wash. I mean, God, otherwise you could spend a lot of time with that little brush trying to brush off, especially with wild mushrooms, all of the different detritus on it.
Yeah, to be honest, I think I probably just lob the dirt in as well, which is probably where the arguments come from. But
hey, look, everybody's got to eat their pound of dirt at some time, right?
Yeah, you're getting a little bit of probiotics in there too.
Well, look, you know, the problem that I found with these last few years is they're pushing us towards living in a bubble.
Yeah,
You know, it's like, don't touch this, don't touch that, don't eat this, don't eat that. It's like, what am I, Bubble Boy? Come on. You know, everything's got to be wiped down and sterilized. I do not want to live in a sterile environment. That's not human.
No.
We don't live in a sterile environment, period.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think you're right. That's kind of the reason why people are starting to get more illness, is because they just don't have the immunity built up from being exposed from bugs anymore.
Absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's such a fascinating subject. And like I say, you know, we could talk about mushrooms, and we have done, Russ, haven't we? We have had a lot of.
We have.
We didn't even touch the psychedelic aspect, because again, that's a whole nother.
So I decided this time to not even talk. I think, you know, last time we talked a lot about it, and I think, you know, there's a balance, and I think the balance is, you know, making sure you're being safe out there. And I think that's the bigger concern is, you know, Sarah talks a lot about going out and foraging and getting your own mushrooms. Like I've watched Into the Wild, I've read the book, like, and I like, there are mistakes you can make that could be deadly. And there are mistakes you can make that are going to be, you know, a fun 24 hours.
Look, I tell anybody who's wild mushroom hunting, you know, unless that mushroom has been positively identified by an absolute expert, do not eat it, period. And normally, if you go out, you know, there's mycological societies out there that you can go out with them, and they have people that have been doing it for dozens of years. And what you do is you identify a couple of mushrooms, simple ones like the chanterelle. Then you can go out with some confidence to harvest the chanterelles, and maybe over a period of time you learn another one and maybe another one. But oh my God! And look, please, you know, everybody thinks, oh yeah, mushrooms, they can be poisonous. There are poisonous plants out there too. Excuse me. You know?
Right. That's right.
Yeah, for sure. And most places, like I'm here in Santa Cruz, but also in the UK, a lot of the farmers markets now, people who are trained are providing local mushrooms, a whole variety. So you don't just have to get the button mushrooms from the shop. I mean, here we're very lucky. We have pink oysters and the little tiny ones, the trumpet ones. You can get a huge variety of local mushrooms. You don't have to go out and kind of risk making yourself ill.
Absolutely. You're in a great place for that, because certainly there's a lot of small growers in California that produce all of the different very interesting edible mushrooms. And let me tell you something too. They'll be selling them. They'll be very expensive, and the reason is that they're making $2 an hour. That's not how they make a living. It's not easy as a mushroom grower. You have to get up to scale before you can actually make more than $2 an hour. I mean it. Those small farmers that are coming in with their mushrooms, they've got some other job. Somebody else is working to do that. They're doing it because they love doing it. And because you're going like, oh wow, $50 a kilo for lion's mane. Holy smokes.
Wow. Yeah. Now, Jeff, I think on that. So where we can find everything about you and your company is it is it realmushrooms.com?
Realmushrooms.com is our retail division. Go there for the educational information that we have on that site. It's very deep in that. The company that sells raw materials is Nammex, Nammex.com.
Right.
We have a menu there that says education. We have so much information for people, including really great slideshows that show people how we grow our mushrooms, how we process our mushrooms. Go for the educational materials, and I'm not here to sell you anything. I just want you to know more about mushrooms so you're educated and know what to look for.
Yeah, for sure. I'm definitely going to take a look. I mean, I'm so interested in the mushroom that reacts to UV, so that will be my next port of call after this call. And in fact, I'm kind of all about brain health. And so looking at how you can stack your hacks, or how you can do multiple things together. So how can you, if you're on a brain program, utilize mushrooms to support that? Or if you're looking to boost your immunity, there are so many ways that you can put things together. So that's super cool. Thank you for your time. We'll certainly put all your links up on the website. And it was really lovely to speak to you. I'm going to go into the forest today with renewed vigor. I just take the photos, but even so, it's just such a fabulous topic. Thank
That's
you
right.
so
Russ,
much.
be sure and check in with her at the end of the day to make sure she's all right.
I do.
I'll make sure.
I do
Sarah,
a mushroom symbol on the text. It means
that's right.
survived.
It's been a pleasure talking to you both. It's really been great. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Breaking the gray.